Here we have problem 2 from the January 2020 CXC Math exam. In part A, we are asked to factorize the following expressions completely. In the first part, we have 5h squared minus 12hg. I'm going to start by writing out the factors of each term. So, for 5h squared, I can write this as 5 times h, and then minus the 12hg, I can factor the 12 as 3 times 4 times h times g. Now, notice that h is the only factor that is common in both of these terms. So that's what we're going to factor out. We have h times 5h and then minus 3 times 4 times g. We can combine the 3 and the 4 together to get h times 5h minus 12g. And that's our final answer. Now in part 2, we are asked to factor 2x squared minus x minus 6. Now in general, if you have a quadratic of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, your goal is to find two numbers that multiply to a times c and add up to b. So here, a is 2 and c is equal to negative 6. So I need two numbers that multiply to give us negative 12. And our b here is negative 1. Two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add up to negative 1 are 3 and negative 4. We're going to start by rewriting our expression 2x squared minus x minus 6. But what we're going to do is rewrite that middle term, the minus x, using the two numbers that we came up with, the 3 and the negative 4. I'm going to rewrite this as 2x squared plus 3x minus 4x and then minus 6. We're going to look at these terms in two groups, the 2x squared plus 3x and then the minus 4x minus 6. And what we'll want to do is to factor each of these groups individually. So between the 2x squared and the plus 3x, I have a common factor of x. So pulling that out, we get x times 2x plus 3. In the other group, the minus 4x minus 6 has a common factor of negative 2. Pulling out a negative 2, I get 2x plus 3 remaining. So what we notice at this point is we have a 2x plus 3 in the first group, a 2x plus 3 in the second group, which means that we can factor that out, leaving me with x minus 2 times 2x plus 3. And that is our final answer. In part B, we are asked to solve the equation r plus 3 equals 3 times r minus 5. We're going to start by distributing the right-hand side. So we have r plus 3 on the left equals 3r minus 15 when we multiply out the right-hand side. Our next goal is to get all of the r's on one side and all of the other numbers on the other side. So, for example, I can subtract r from both sides. This gives me 3 on the left-hand side and 2r minus 15 on the right-hand side. Now if I add 15 to both sides, I get 18 equals 2r. Finally, to get r on its own, I divide both sides by 2, giving me r equals 9. And that is our solution. In part C, we're asked to make k the subject of the formula. This means that we want to get k on one side of the equation. Typically, we like to write k on the left-hand side. So I'm going to reorder this equation as pi k squared plus 3t equals 2a. I just rearrange the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So to get k by itself, I might start by subtracting 3t from both sides, giving me pi times k squared equals 2a minus 3t. Then I can divide both sides by pi to get k squared equals 2a minus 3t divided by pi. And then lastly, to get k on its own, I would take the square root of both sides. This gives me k equals square root of 2a minus 3t divided by pi. Now, one thing to remember is when you take the square root of both sides of the equation, we need a plus or minus here. So k equals plus or minus square root of 2a minus 3t divided by pi. And that's your final answer. Part D says a farmer plants 2 crops, potatoes and corn, on a 10-hectare piece of land. The number of hectares of corn planted, C, must be at least twice the number of hectares of potatoes, P. Write 2 inequalities that represent the scenario above. One inequality that we can see relates the amount of corn and the amount of potatoes. We need the amount of corn to be at least twice the amount of potatoes. So I'm going to write down the quantities C and twice the potatoes, I'm going to write down as 2p. Now, since I know that the amount of corn has to be at least twice the amount of potatoes, the inequality goes this way. Right? C is greater than or equal to 2p. And that's one of my inequalities. The other inequality comes from the first sentence. It says a farmer plants corn and potato on a 10-hectare piece of land. Now, the farmer can use all 10 hectares of his land, but he doesn't necessarily have to. All we know is that the amount of corn and the amount of potatoes can't use over 10 hectares of land. So we have the inequality C plus P that has to be less than or equal to 10 hectares. And those are my 2 inequalities. C is greater than or equal to 2p, and C plus P is less than or equal to 10.